Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Sandy Springs, Georgia, it's time for In and On Business. Brought to you by the Sandy Springs Perimeter Chamber. For more information, go to sandyspringsperimeterchamber.com. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to In and On Business with the Sandy Springs Perimeter Chamber, where we explore the tension between day-to-day business operations and strategic growth, the in and on of business. I'm your host, Andy Williams. In each episode, we explore the ideas surrounding working in your business while also exploring the essential strategies for working on your business. Whether that's carving out the visionary path or delivering a final product to streamlining processes, sustainability, whatever the case may be, both working in and on your business is a necessity to achieving the balance of your success and your company's success. Our guest today first is Gloria Mattei. Correct with the last name? Mattei. I knew I was going to get it right, even though I knew you corrected me already. Owner of not one, but two Nothing Bundt Cakes here in Georgia. And Matt Foster, tax partner at Frazier Deeter. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you guys here to share stories, wisdom of everything you all do to leverage your in and out of business within your own organizations. To get us started, let's start with our guests, learn a little bit more about them. Gloria, oddly enough, you began your career in accounting as well. So let's hear how you made that transition from accountant to Nothing Bundt Cakes.
From Nothing Bundt Cakes, right. So I started, like you said, my career as an accountant. I was a CPA, and I started in the auditing world. I was auditor for the Office of the Comptroller of Puerto Rico. And then I wanted to be in one of the big six companies, right, doing tax and auditing. And the opportunity came for a telecommunications company that was looking for bilingual accountants. And so I had the opportunity to interview with them. And it was actually a company that was the legacy company of what today is Verizon. It was called GTE. And they were looking for bilingual individuals for their international operations. So that's how I ended up in the United States, from Puerto Rico to the United States, as an accountant, as an auditor in taxing and all operational for all their international operations and also domestic. And so from accounting, I was there for about 5 years in the accounting world, doing new business initiatives and everything that was telecommunications based. And in all honesty, I loved accounting, but I got tired of the taxing and the closings and the closing months in one of the closing flash meetings that we had, they were talking about that we were losing revenue in one of the cell towers because we were losing records. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to learn about the business. I want to know what the business is about, not just the numbers. And so I did a completely 360 degree, and there was an opportunity on a new team that was being developed for telematics. So remember OnStar and General Motors? So I jumped into that team completely away from accounting into building that network and doing the operations of that network. And so I was there for 16 plus years. And I was traveling all over the United States in different OEMs, etc. And then I was in San Diego doing one of my trips to one of the OEMs, and my friend invited me to a Nothing Bundt Cakes, and I said, what's that? And he said, have never had Nothing Bundt Cakes? It's like, no. And so I said, I don't know, I'll go with you. I don't like cake. And so I went, I saw the bakery, and I was like, oh my God, this is the cutest thing. It was in San Diego. And I tried the cake, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I asked him, is there anything like this in Georgia? And he's like, no, I know them from Dallas, and they do super well. And I said, oh, that's very interesting. And then he brought home like a bunch of cakes with him. It's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I need to bring this for gifts. Everybody loves them. So anyway, I came home and I told my husband, hey, I think I found something else I want to do. And the reason is because in the back of our mind, I have two kids, but my oldest son is in the spectrum. He's autistic. And so I knew that corporate world was going to be hard, right?
For sure.
So for some reason, we had in the back of our head, we got to do something on our own and see if it's that platform for him. If it's not a platform, at least we can prove if he can work with us, that he has a value in society. And so that was what's in the back of my mind about, stepping out of corporate world and doing this.
It's excellent.
And so the first reaction was, you're crazy, you don't bake, you don't cook, you don't do anything, right? And I said, that's true, I don't do anything. I always travel all over the place. So it just ended being serendipity, and we just left the conversation there, and I was actually moving to a new house, and my friend that introduced me said, hey, somebody took your idea, and there's a store opening in Sandy Springs. And I said, oh, God, I wanted to be the first bakery in Georgia. I said, it's okay, I can be the second one. And so he actually brought cakes to my housewarming party. And so when my husband saw the reaction on everybody's face, he's like, is this the place you told me about? It's like, yeah. So we lost the opportunity of number one. We got to be number two. And he said, looks like you're into something. And so we started the research, and the reason why I ended up owning Nothing But Cakes.
And here we are.
Now I got number one and number two bakeries in Georgia.
Yes, that's excellent. That's because, and over the course of time, you ended up acquiring that first one.
Yeah.
That's such an amazing story to me, just on so many different levels, just simply one being an accountant and then transitioning all the way and turning on a very different side of the brain. It's
completely different side of the brain. I remember that when I decided to study accounting and be a CPA, what I had in my head was what my first accounting professor at college told me. And it's like, if you're an accountant, you can own your own business, you can do whatever you want. And so that's what actually inspired me to go into accounting. But never in my life thought I would own my own business. I was corporate hardcore. So that was a completely out of nowhere.
Excellent. Well, does that make you corporate hardcore at Frazier Deeter? Is that where we land with? Give us some of your background, Matthew.
This is a tough opening act to follow here, because mine is much more simple. Yeah, I mean, I'm a tax partner at Frazier and Deeter. I've been there for 15 years. So unlike you, I am from Atlanta. I'm from this area, actually. I'm from Dunwoody, right where we're sitting right now, and have both of my degrees from Georgia State. And I remember the summer of 2008 very clearly. I left the school in June of 2008, in May of 2008, and I walked into the doors of Frazier and Deeter in June of 2008, and I haven't left since. So, unlike you, I am a true walking accountant. It's just the same as last year, every single year. But no, I've greatly enjoyed the time I've spent here, and I mean, it's why I've decided to become a partner here and stay here. And it's working with individuals like yourself, working with small business owners, usually family founder-owned businesses, and helping them to navigate the IRS, navigate the accounting side of the business, because a lot of people don't have your skill set that have started businesses, and they're very, very good at what they do, but struggle a little bit with how to operate a business. So you're a package that we don't see very often in a client base.
No.
It's hard when you build your own business and you really don't have any background, right? Mm-hmm. And still, as we'll talk about it comes to a point in which, even though you may have that background, you do need that extra help. Because you cannot focus on that if you really want to grow your business.
Yeah, so I mean, we're brought in a lot of the times to help take over some of that for them, but also give them ideas about stuff they haven't been thinking about, ideas about expanding, or having them look 3 to 5 years out, and they're so focused on the now, they're so focused on next week or making payroll next week, that they fail to really think about, well, where do we want to take our business? How far do we want to take it? Or, can we make it bigger? Can we expand? Or do we want to sell it at some point? Yeah.
Well, and I think you lead in with an interesting point there, is that there's a lot more being asked of you as an accountant than what probably the general public looks at. We look at it very much as it's the numbers and their ledgers, and this is the route that we go. But the reality is you're asked to think outside the box for these people as well too.
No, it's funny. A lot of people when they hear that I do taxes. They think I'm just sitting there with a green visor and I've got my 10. Well, I do have my 10 key, and I love my 10 key. But no, to your point, it's not just looking at the traditional compliance, not just looking at the tax return, but learning about them, learning about what drives them, and what can we do to help further what they want to do with their business. And it might not be anything that we can do, but it's knowing people that we can bring in to help with what they want done.
No, and spot on. And that's where it's, from an innovation standpoint, I think I would say that's probably where you've seen, a lot of businesses, accounting firms especially, grow, is you weren't always supposed to necessarily learn and gain all that inside depth and knowledge. But the importance of that is what I think everyone sees now, is there's a lot more that goes into strategic thinking of how do we approach it. Now, to transition to you from a strategic standpoint, is how do you evolve and innovate and grow Nothing Bundt Cakes? Like what does that look like, especially as a franchisee and and moving a business forward? You're really leaning probably hard in on corporate a little, but they also want you to go and innovate on your own.
So it's an interesting aspect, right? And again, I had the view of I got to do something on my own. I didn't know what, right? All I knew was accounting and corporate world. So I knew I needed some structure. So that's the reason why a franchise kind of attracted my attention. It's like, I'm a rule follower. I know how to follow a path, right? And so I need that structure. Once I have the structure, I can probably just, venture from there. And it's interesting. Once you start your own business, franchise or no franchise, you are mostly the beginning of the time just in the business constantly. I mean, labor is tough. You don't have the right manpower. You don't have the right team. You are just working in the business in my case, I had no experience in the food industry. I had no experience in baking. Right. I just had to learn that in 3 weeks and then fly, right? So, yes, they give you a structure, but you really have to come up and bring in all those skills. And for sure, being an accountant, being in corporate world, that really helped me. It was a huge learning curve. So it was a transition for me into venturing into the day-to-day operations, physically being there, not only implementing all the training that we learn, but also how do you coach your team, right? And so from an working in the business perspective, that's where the majority of the action should go, right? Coaching the team, growing your team, making sure that they can do their day-to-day operations so that you can transition out and then work on your business and figure out, okay, where do we go next, right? And it's been quite a journey from the first days of, my God, we did 24 hours a day just trying to learn the operations in and out, and then stepping out and saying, wait, we're spending too much money in cost of goods, right? We have too much money in inventory. How do we lower the cost? We need to make this profitable, et cetera, et cetera. And that's when you step out and got to see all of that.
Now, staffing is a key, buzzword these days. And I'm sure, you all are in different situations, because I'm sure you have part-time staffing that you also have, let alone full-time. You're primarily full-time at Frazier Deeter, but I would suspect that all of that still it's the same conversation that you're having of how do you, how are you finding these new accountants and bringing them on board? How are you finding this part-time staff to fall in love with a business and want to be there, day in and day out? So, from I love the idea of coaching. My background is in sports, and sports is my passion. So when I look at something in coaching somebody, I look at, how do you coach an athlete, or how do you, grow them from there? I think, I also look at it in the business world. It works the same way. So looking at you first, Matt, from a coaching, growing, being in the business a little bit more is how do you, what do you do, to coach and grow your team and ensure, their own success and peace of mind?
I mean, this is a huge thing that we're dealing with right now, where we constantly are asking our staff, I mean, what is lacking? What can we do better? And one of the things is training and coaching and developing. Developing is a big key word inside public accounting, and probably in other career paths. But it's in the business space. We need to develop these people into becoming the next leaders of the organization, into the next level. And COVID has changed that up quite a bit for us. We did start noticing. I mean, I kind of liken it back to I have 2 small kids, and both of them started elementary school during COVID, and there's definitely this COVID lag to their learning. We're starting to overcome it, and in business, we're starting to overcome the COVID lag as well, because when everybody left the office, and we went full remote for, about a year, and even now we're a hybrid environment, but that year away from our staff, our seniors, sitting outside in bullpens and not hearing the conversations between partners, between managers, and just the overhearing highly technical conversations happening, nobody realized how valuable just the hearing it being talked about in the open in the office was, until we didn't have the office to talk about it. So it's overcoming and learning how to now work in a hybrid environment and still impart that knowledge. This past year, we did our first firm-wide, where we brought everybody in to do a week-long of training where you could network and not only learn technical aspects, but soft skills, leadership, how to work around, looking at people's shortcomings, but they're not shortcomings. No. It's strengths that are hidden, and how to identify those, but also work around a big push in our firm, and I think in corporate America in general, is this push around mental health and being more cognizant of that in the workplace.
Absolutely. I think, that's something we've all, had to check that a good bit here over the past, year and a half. You bringing up having young kids at home, some of the things even, for us with, my wife working upstairs, me working downstairs, and kids working in the middle, we kind of let things slide of, who are you online with? What are you talking to? Because we knew they needed that exchange and that interaction. And, I think it proves your point of being back in the office matters, and having that interpersonal communication is extremely important, from a knowledge standpoint, but also from just a mental health standpoint, just to sit down and have a conversation with somebody, and not necessarily about work, but just to turn it all off a little bit and take care of yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot lost in translation when you're over Teams or over Zoom. That I work in the office as much as possible. I like to work hands-on with the people that are working on my clients. And a lot of times there might be some sarcasm that's thrown around, and it comes across much easier in person than it does over Zoom or over email. Mm-hmm. So, bringing up development, bringing up coaching. When you talked about, what's the difference between on and in. So I was thinking about this over the weekend and over the past couple of days, and when I look at working, I get the two confused.
I'm with you. There's a lot in both.
The on and
sure.
the in here. It boils down to what's the core values of your business.
Absolutely.
And for Frazier and Deeter, we call it PEAK. So it's people, entrepreneurial, accessible, and quality. Okay. And we live on those core values. So for our people, it's one of our things is we greatly invest in our people, and in turn, we want them to invest in our clients. So by working in your business on your people, it should in turn, or is it the other way around?
Sorry. I think you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
It in turn, it works on your business at the same time. Absolutely. By focusing on the quality that you're providing to your clients.
No, I love that. And I was going to say your experience, because again, you're dealing with younger group.
Yeah. It's a completely different experience. So COVID was definitely quite a adventure in a different way, right? So I was lucky enough that I didn't have to close doors because I was not considered a restaurant. So I wasn't serving people. I don't have chairs and tables, etc. So I was allowed to stay open. But then I was impacted by the fear of the employees. I was impacted by, we all were like, okay, so what are we going to do? We had big corporate orders that were shut down immediately. Okay, so how do we pull back? And, you got to bring down all of the production effort, et cetera. And that's the working on the business. And then working in the business was, okay, so how do I provide some safety to the team members that I have in here? Because I got to make sure that they're safe. Right, and continue the coaching aspect. I got lucky too because I have a mix. I have a mix of younger people and I have a mix of adults that some of them are, maybe retired moms that are just doing something that they like to do and they don't need the income. So I was really lucky because they were like, we're good. We're just going to go home and wait for this to pass. Right. And some of the kids were also, my mom and my dad doesn't want me to work. But then I had the other ones and kind of mixing it into the mental health. I had other ones that were like, if I stay in my house, I will go crazy. I cannot do this. I have to be active. I get depressed. And it's like, well, I'll provide you a safe environment. We'll put everything in place that we need to put. But we got to make things happen, right? And it's that coaching of, in good days you have, and where there is abundance, and when there's sales, this is how you operate. But there's a lot of coaching on when that's not the case, how do you operate, right?
No, and I think that's great. I think, the piece that really stuck out, and, Matt, you had said it, strengths that are hidden. To me, like that was I wrote that down as like, that's something that's an interesting viewpoint to look at, because too often, if somebody's not successful or they're not hitting marks or doing what they need to do, you almost look at that as a downfall for them and a failure. And but at the end of the day, it's not. It's how do we coach them up? How do we build them up? How do we make that?
And it could be even going further. They might not be hitting the marks in the job that they're doing, but is there somewhere else in the organization that their skill set would be better?
Very valuable.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right.
So we have a couple people that I've seen go from our tax department to operations to marketing, and it's, they do a good job, but it wasn't. You could tell it wasn't what they were built to do, and so it was. If you look at it just in the lens of their tax person, well, of course they're going to fail. If you take a step back and say, well, what skill sets are they showing, and is there somewhere else in the organization that would be a better fit? And we try to move people around as best as possible.
Yeah, I think that applies to any business, any industry. I think it's the flexibility, but it also goes with the developing mindset, right? It's not just about looking what is on the outside. You apply for this job and this is what you're going to do. It's about, you may not be hitting the mark here, but let me find where you can be, and giving them that opportunity. I think that happens in any industry. Corporate, of course, I've seen it, but even in this, and that has been one of my biggest eye-openers. In my favorite story, I had an individual that applied for a job, and he actually applied. I divide the bakery between back of the house and front of the house, and he thought he wanted a back of the house job, and we knew he had special needs, and so that's close and dear to my heart, and of course I offered him a job. And it was interesting. He really didn't have the motor skills to be able to function in the back of the house, but the personality that individual had was amazing.
Right.
And the way that he talked to people and the way that he connected, going back to values, one of our values is creating genuine connections. So it's much more than cake, right? It's much more than the best product. You have to create that genuine connection with the guests that you're serving. He was fantastic. As soon as we moved him to the front of the house, he could talk a storm, and he could create those connections, and he could say, and it was amazing. Nowadays, he evolved. He found a job with other persons because we were able to give them the opportunity and find that spot. And he's now an assistant for special needs kids in a school, which is fantastic.
Yes,
right?
no, and that's great. And I think, it kind of leads a little bit into the on side of things, and that passion that goes into, finding that passion for somebody and what that means. And, across your businesses, having that passion or innovation or opportunity to, work on your business and grow it is always interesting. And I think, the accounting profession, we had spoken before, is like, how do you, students, new hires, how do you engage someone to go like, and both of you actually can answer this since, with a background in accounting is, how do you turn somebody's brain on to go like, this is where I want to be? How do you get them to find that passion of, you're fighting the marketers of the world, with, hey, we have fun and we go out and we entertain and we do this. But at the end of the day, you all are doing a lot of those same things and you're engaging in the same way. So how do you get people to see that accounting profession as this place that's evolved and grown to be more?
So it's interesting you bring that up. I've been talking with the head of the School of Accountancy at Georgia State, and they're having this issue right now where there's not big enrollment into the accounting program anymore. And we're seeing it in the profession. I mean, we're seeing it in the industry that we're seeing less students coming out of the school system. And so we're having a shortage of first years coming into the profession. And what is the issue here? I mean, that's the thing. And it boils down to, or this is my take on it. I don't know if it's right, but this is what I've been thinking for a while is accounting in general. I mean, it goes back to what do most people think about when they think of accounting? They think of, in a suit and a tie, very, long hours, never see light, always behind a computer, or now always behind a computer. But very boring. I mean, dealing with the IRS. Who wants to deal with the IRS? Nobody wants to. I don't even want to. But very boring career. Whereas, I mean, there are boring times. I think anything that you do, there are boring times if you've done it for long enough. But it's also we have a new generation of leaders in the accounting space that we need to show the students, we need to show younger individuals out there that the days of, grinding are, I mean, it's starting to slow down. I mean, it's still there. There's busy times, there's slower times, but we're not just people in suits and ties. I mean, we all have personalities. We all have lives outside of accounting, and it's not just sitting down grinding for 10 hours a day and then going home and doing it all over again the next day. It is working very closely with business owners, getting to know them on a personal level so that we can help them with other needs, not just filling out their tax forms. But it's trying to get people to see, because a lot of the older professionals in this industry, where the long hours and the never seeing their kids' baseball games or something along that as a badge of honor, which is not what anybody wants to hear anymore. And in fact, I am very clear with my team. I'm like, hey, my girls have cheerleading tonight. I'm going to see them cheer. Like, if you have kids that are doing something, we're doing this for our family, but why give up seeing your family grow up just to do this?
No, that's and I love that. I know I made it a point, and my father was in sales, but he was also able to be home a lot of afternoons when I still got home, and that's definitely rubbed off on me, of wanting to make sure I was around and being around, and so I think that's extremely important. I think it's important for all businesses, not just... It is,
but I think it's what you just said, right? It's about them understanding what is the value of what they're bringing to the community, in a way, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's like you said, accountants are not just about the numbers and the taxes and just crunching the numbers from February through April, and if you're in corporate, the different time frame. But it's about helping that business owner finding an exit strategy, or where do you get the funds to do that growth that you need, and I think those are exciting times. But it's a misconception, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, because my first indication when I told my kids my story and I was an accountant, you were one of those boring people that, okay,
Yeah.
but it's much more than that. No, absolutely. But I think it's in any industry, of course. I mean, the majority of my younger, adults, of course, they're coming just to do a summer job, or they're coming to do an after-school job, etc. But I mean, it's much more than that. They can
Absolutely.
get a lot more than just, learning how to do a POS or whatever. The majority of my kids that come in, and it's actually very rewarding. They come super shy. They barely answer the questions in the interview. And then when you put them in front of the guest and they start talking, and I mean, you see them progress and how they go into college, and you see them coming back and asking for references, and it's like, hey, would you tell them what I did at the bakery and the connections that I made, and I went with you and I talked to people, because those are skills that they are going to need wherever they go, right? And when I bring people into the bakery that I see a potential, is if you stay with us, you can do a growth, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be a bakery. I mean, the task, I mean, the skills that you're going to learn are going to work with you wherever you go. Right.
Well, and I think I look at it as they really become the face of the business. It's not you.
No.
It's these, young children looking for part-time jobs that are, they become the face of the business. So you have to kind of share all of that knowledge, information, and get them to a point to be comfortable in their skin and show that compassion.
It all goes to the coaching and the developing, right? And I think you need to be honest with them. And it's also about the values, right? I don't think if you have any values in your business, then it's very hard to communicate this and get this in their heads. But for us is, servant's heart. I mean, that's what you're here for, to serve the community in one way or the other. Spirit of a champion, things are going to get hard. And it doesn't matter the industry, again.
Right.
And so it's the spirit of a champion. You got to get through it. And it will be fine. You will get through the other end, right? And genuine connections. One of the many things, again, I was in corporate world and I was in the crunching numbers all the time. And one of the things that I never did was be out in the community and outreach at the community. Yes, we had the contributions to, donations that you did that were matching by the company and all of that. But being out there in the community was not something that I did a lot in corporate world. And that was one of my biggest rewards as I step out. Because, I mean, who moves you as a business owner? The community. Yeah.
Yep. No, for sure. Well, one last kind of question. I don't want to keep us all here for the afternoon, because we could go round and round and chat even further. But as industry leaders in your respective spaces, what advice would you give to others as to how do you balance not just work life, but even the in and on business, or balance. All of this moving forward. What's something, a little piece that we could share of how do you balance, working in and on business specifically, but even more broadly, because we've hit it a number of times. How do you balance all of it? Life, work, live, work, play, how do you balance all of that? What's that piece of advice you'd give, somebody young that's listening to us today?
So I go back to, I think you have to step back sometimes and have a vision of what you're doing. In my case, it's super easy to go in because I'm a control freak and I want to make sure that everything is perfect, and I'm a perfectionist. But in my case, it's really hard to, when I go in the bakery, I just want to have hands-on, right? But I have to be very conscious and have the vision of stepping back, saying, wait a second, I am not helping them in any way. I'm not developing them if I do this, right? And I think it's it's a journey. In my case, as a small business owner, you are maybe 90% in at the beginning of your years, and then you have to progress eventually to be more, I would say, 80, 90, and 10 or 20 in, right? Mm-hmm. But it's definitely the vision of for me is stepping back and I'm like, okay, how am I going to develop them? They are the ones that are going to carry the torch, either in my bakery or somewhere else. And if I do the in, then I'm not developing them. Right. And I think that's the key in my case. For me, is stepping back, wait a second. That's not where I need to be. I need to be developing them so that they go to their next level. That's
great. That's great, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think it's the on comes before the in.
I agree.
I mean, the on, it boils down to, I said it earlier, that, I mean, it has to be your core values. You have to decide what are the core values of your business. Make sure that your team knows that and they believe in those core values also. Because if they don't believe it and they don't show it, then the end is not going to, it doesn't matter. So, I mean, they really feed off of each other. But, I mean, the whole work life, the balance of the whole.
Of all of it.
That's a tough one. I mean, it takes years to practice, to learn. I was telling my girls the other day, it's like my youngest, it's, you know, sometimes something's hard. You have to practice at it before it becomes easy. And when it comes to balancing this, and I mean, I've been in public accounting now for 15 years. You have to know you have to set your own limits. You have to set what is important to you and what is your end result that you want to achieve, and set that firm and work towards that, but don't try to work past it. Know when to stop. Otherwise, if you don't, then you are going to just 100% dive into work, and life is just going to leave. And I mean, I learned it a hard way several years ago, but over the past several years, I found what I wanted to achieve, and I've just been working towards that. And it has changed dramatically the balancing act that I've been doing.
It's great. What I Love said, just to kind of wrap this up in a little bit of a bow here for all of us. What I took most out of this was the on before the end.
I love that.
I think that was great. Like it's such a unique perspective to look at it. In regards to that fashion, and the key words and phrases and things that I heard throughout, like passion, really is what it boils down to. Just a passion for not just your business, but for all those involved. I love the story of the young gentleman who just started out in the back and then works his way to the front because he really could connect and bring it to life a little bit. So it's great to hear from both of y'all. That's going to bring us to a close here today on In and On Business. I want to thank both of you all for being a part of the Sandy Springs Chamber. We're grateful for you all and your businesses and our community. We appreciate your experiences and expertise. I want to thank the team at Business RadioX for hosting us and taking care of us here today, and all of our partners and their continued support. I hope you enjoyed your time with us, and we look to see you next month.